Hello, my name is Edna Varner, and I'd like to welcome you to Westside Evolves. Chattanooga's Westside is an established downtown community with over 2,000 residents. One of the oldest communities in the area is College Hills Courts, which is Chattanooga's oldest public housing neighborhood. College Hills turned 80 years old last June. Throughout the years, the Boynton Terrace Apartments, Gateway Tower, and Dogwood Manor were built, doubling the number of public housing units within the Westside District. The community encompasses the Golden Gateway area between US 27, Riverfront Parkway, MLK Boulevard, and Main Street. The neighborhoods in the community are home to young families and longtime residents. It is surrounded on all sides by downtown districts that are growing and changing. Because of this, it's time to plan for an area that is rich in history and is positioned for an equally bright future. The Chattanooga Housing Authority, the Chattanooga Design Studio, and the City of Chattanooga have partnered together to provide the framework for the planning process. The Chattanooga Design Studio is leading a process to proactively imagine the future of the West Side. Due to the age, history, and complexity of the area, thoughtful planning as well as design improvements are needed to plan for the future. The efforts will be designed to provide plans and policies for deconcentration of poverty and to encourage the mixing of income levels within the communities. The Chattanooga Housing Authority recognizes that their role is to preserve and expand affordable housing opportunities in our community. As part of the planning process, strategies are being developed to support a one-for-one replacement of subsidized housing units in this district. This particular place in our city holds significant potential opportunity for residents who require access to jobs, education, and services. To get a better understanding of the area, I'd like to introduce you to a couple of people to share some insights into the work being done. Meet Sharon Dragg, a longtime resident of the West Side. So Sharon, how long have you lived in the West Side?
Well, I moved over there when I was 5. I left there when I was 11, became Miss James A. Henry, and I'm back now, and I've been back 3 years standing. But my whole family generation has been over there a lifetime. My grandmother was over there. My mom lived there, my nieces, my sisters, and my brothers. And I have 3 nieces and 2 brothers that's still there now. And
So you've been there a while.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about some of your fondest memories of living in the West Side.
All right. One of my fondest memories is when I became Miss James A. Henry. Okay? Then I also have much fun with the flagpole. We had the flagpole, and in the summertime, that was our swimming pool. And in the wintertime, that was our skating area. And I had a lot of fun getting up at 11 o'clock, going to the flagpole to swim. And my other memories is at James A. Henry, we used to have the summer programs that they taught us how to sew. I learned how to sew. And in the meantime, as far as my life, I've sold Howard High cheerleaders outfits. I sold Alton Park majorettes outfit from the learning how to sew in that community.
So Sharon, this question is really important for the West Side planning. What are your wishes and hopes for the West Side?
My wishes and hope is they can bring back the flagpole, the memories, and upgrade those apartments around it, a lot of art, because the kids that we have out there now, they like to see, they draw on our streets. So they like to see a lot of drawing, and I like to see a lot of art go up, more nice apartments for the West Side.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
Another person I'd like to introduce you to is Ray Parks with EJP Consulting. Ray's firm is guiding the planning process and will share the expectations for the planning process.
Thank you, Edna. So EJP Consulting Group, we are delighted to be a part of this very collaborative planning effort with the Housing Authority, as well as the city and the design studio. Our charge effectively is that we will work with the community and stakeholders to help develop a transformation plan for this district. And this plan is intended to serve as a roadmap for the future of this neighborhood. And we are focused on not just the physical components of this neighborhood, but also ensuring that the plan itself focuses intentionally on the people who live in this neighborhood, including ensuring that there are supports for families, that the plan itself results in direct benefits to residents who call this neighborhood home. The plan is intended to deliver on several core goals. One of them is that the existing affordable units will be replaced on a one-for-one basis. This is a very important commitment that the city, the Housing Authority, and the design studio has made. Another core goal is that we would be looking at developing a mixed income community that introduces a range of housing options, where today we have 100% affordable units. We want to not only preserve the existing affordable units, we also would like to grow the supply of quality affordable housing, as well as introduce unsubsidized housing as well. The plan will be looking at how to either support or enhance or introduce new neighborhood amenities, services, retail, as well as economic development opportunities. The plan is also intended to leverage existing partnerships, existing opportunities, and to that point, we will be looking at ways that we could align this planning effort with opportunities that exist adjacent to us, as well as in the downtown core and further afield. So we are looking to plan smartly, as well as to plan better, so that residents and community stakeholders have a plan in the end that meets the needs of current residents, as well as future residents who might want to call this neighborhood home, as well as supporting the existing institutions and businesses that are here today. The plan is intended to be flexible and adaptable over time. It will be grounded by a market study that helps inform how the housing plan might evolve, how the economic development strategy might evolve. The plan is also going to be guided by a financing strategy that begins to outline how the plan gets implemented. But more importantly, the plan is intended to reflect the vision and priorities of the neighborhood. At the core of all of this work is that this is a neighborhood plan that is owned and championed by residents and local stakeholders.
Thank you so much, Ray. The process will also connect opportunities for public art and landscape design into the public space. We're going to hear from our team's creative strategist and lead engagement artist, Erica Roberts, as she shares information about the creative pieces of the work being done in the neighborhood.
I work with the creatives and our neighbors and within the community, sharing some collective experiences. And there are so many amazing stories that we get to tell. One of the key individuals on our creative team is Charlie Newton. He is our artist in residence. And Charlie's role is paramountly important in the fact that he is artistically interpreting the entire process through his artistic lens. And this includes the advisory group meetings. We have so many creative individuals in the district, and we know that there's great potential for those stories to be heard, showing the place that we all call home. Another way that we've connected with the community through art is telling those stories from the community. and we call that our memory room. It is located in the historic James A. Henry School. And this effort was led by myself and Ben Banks. And we have so many creative individuals in the district that this was important to tell this story completely. One of our efforts in this storytelling is to tell the story of the land. And one of the important parts of this community is a space in the middle, and it's called Grace. There's a tree there. This tree holds very sentimental moments for each community member that we talk to in those community stories. I wrote a poem to go along with the picture that we took of this beautiful tree, and at this moment, I'd like to recite it for you. Saluting in all directions, offering hugs to those down below. Cypress, maple, poplar, grove, rooted in a space that shares voices, loud and clear. We hear the ancestors. Protection lives under her branches. Times move, but she is constant, making a way to handle the struggle. A balancing act, unlike no other. A place, a faith, solitude, a community giving grace.
Thank you, Erica. And now we'd like you to experience part of the planning process from the Westside Evolves. Ray, will you please introduce members of the team?
With me today are Hunter G. with Smith G Studio, one of our partners in this planning effort.
Thanks, Ray. We're super excited about working with the Westside community.
And also Kathy Carton, also with EJP Consulting Group.
Thank you, Ray. So happy to be here today.
So what we're going to do today is talk about the existing conditions report that has been published to the project website, and to share a little bit with you about some of the main findings in that report. And this is part of the first phase of the work that we've just completed. And the core issue really is taking a closer look at the existing conditions, documenting these baseline conditions so that we have a good understanding of our past as well as understanding our present. These findings then allow us to work with the community to plan for the future. In the presentation today, as well as on our website, there are a couple of major things that I want to point out for you. We've looked at who lives in the neighborhood today, and incidentally, we're talking about 1,500 or so families. We also look at the history of the neighborhood. We've looked at land use, we've looked at the community character, we've looked at connectivity, we've looked at income and employment, education and youth, as well as crime and community safety. And what have we learned from all of this? This is a neighborhood that has a lot of challenges, but at the same time, this is a neighborhood that has a lot of strengths. And importantly, Hunter and Kathy are going to talk a little bit more in greater detail about what some of these are. But the highlights really are that this is a neighborhood that is affordable. This is a neighborhood that has a deep and rich history as an African-American community. Location is incredible. We're close to downtown, and we are also adjacent to thriving and increasingly developed the riverfront. And lastly, we are also a neighborhood where residents are very engaged and have participated very extensively to date in our planning process, and we anticipate that they will continue to do so today. So at this time, I'm going to turn over to Hunter, who is going to talk a little bit more about the physical dimensions of the existing conditions findings, and then he will turn over to Kathy, who will speak more to the people side of our report. Hunter? Thank
you, Ray. I want to share with everyone that this presentation is accessible on the westsideevolves.com website, and it's an interactive presentation that you can dive into deep or just see the highlights. So Kathy and I are going to primarily hit the highlights today. I'm going to focus on, as Ray mentioned, the physical aspects of the community, and then Kathy will come in and talk about income and employment, health and wellness, youth and education, et cetera. As planners and architects, we want to make sure that as we go into the design and planning process, that we understand the physical aspects of the community. We understand the community character, we understand the fabric of the neighborhood, and we want to understand how the community uses the neighborhood, what's there that they do use, what's needed in the community, and so on. So we go about a process of essentially dissecting the neighborhood into different layers, and we've broken those into three separate categories: land use, connectivity, and community character. So I'm going to drill down a little bit on land use. So we found in the Westside district that the primary land use, of course, is residential. Many of the residential properties are owned by the Chattanooga Housing Authority, but there are also several private residential properties. Likewise, there are commercial uses and some civic uses in the area as well. As Ray mentioned, the proximity to downtown, but also the proximity to the river, we believe are both great assets for this neighborhood. We also found that there's a significant amount of underutilized land in the area, some of which is valuable open space and recreational space, but some of it's parking lots and unused, underutilized open space. There are a few commercial spaces within the study area. However, we found that many of those are vacant today. Finally, we also recognize that there's a number of major investments that have happened recently in the past in downtown and at Cameron Harbor, but also future investments and ongoing investments across Riverfront Parkway at the Bend. So you can drill down a little closer into some of these aspects and learn what we've discovered. For example, open space here. Again, there's Sheila M. Jennings Park right in the heart of the neighborhood, a very valuable asset. However, there's also a lot of underutilized land around some of the high rises on the hill and around some of the city-owned properties. So I'm going to now move to connectivity. And as we think about connectivity, we really are thinking about mobility of all types, whether that's pedestrians, automobiles, transit, bicycles, and so on. And so you can see that we've studied each of these layers. And I'm going to zoom in on a couple of these. One thing we learned was that the neighborhood is served well by public transit, but we found that the frequency and the commute times do create some challenges and long commutes within the neighborhood. We also looked at some of the existing streets. There's a number of streets that feel almost like highways or byways, such as Riverfront Parkway and MLK Boulevard. And yet, interestingly, the neighborhood streets are relatively pedestrian friendly, have shade trees, sidewalks, etc. One of the major barriers to this neighborhood and an element that really isolates the neighborhood from the rest of downtown, of course, is Highway 27. Highway 27 has a number of connections to downtown, but it really does act as a barrier from all of the amenities and assets within the downtown neighborhood. The experience actually walking underneath I-27, we've heard from residents, is not a very pleasant experience and could certainly be enhanced. So we're going to touch on a few of the responses that we got from the survey that Ray mentioned. We found that less than half of the neighbors within the Westside district actually own their own vehicles, which can present some challenges in terms of transportation. So we asked, how big of a barrier is transportation in the Westside district? And while about 75% felt it wasn't a big issue, that still leaves about 25% of the residents that do see transportation as a barrier. So we also looked at community character. A few things that we found really unique about the Westside district is there's some great views. Sitting on Cameron Hill, there's incredible views to downtown, to Lookout Mountain, and to the river. We also found that there's what we call a front porch culture there. Residents love to sit on their front porches and stoops and talk to neighbors and watch their children play outside, or sit outside on benches outside of the residential towers up on the hill and talk to their neighbors. It's an incredible asset that not all communities share. We also found that both the infrastructure and much of the housing is aging and is going to need to be replaced sometime relatively soon. As we look at the existing housing there, we look at the unit mix that currently exist. And interestingly, we found in the Westside District, especially at College Hill Courts and Gateway Tower, we found relatively small units there that can only house a few people. So there's not very many 3-bedroom units and no 4 or 5-bedroom units in those two neighborhoods. We also, of course, recognize that topography is a challenge. Connectivity is a challenge here, partly due to the topography, and we hope to find ways that we can overcome that and better connect the community. So I'm now going to turn it over to Kathy to cover the rest of the existing conditions findings.
So this next part of the presentation focuses on supports and services that residents of the Westside tell us they need and want in order to achieve better outcomes for themselves and their families. We will cover income and employment, health and wellness, education and youth, crime and safety. And much of the information presented in this question was gleaned directly from residents via a detailed in-person survey. However, that survey data was augmented with some other sources of information, including census data provided by the Hamilton County Public Schools, and also data from the Chattanooga Police Department. So with regard to income and employment, median household income in the West Side is extremely low at about $12,000 per year. This is only 20 to 25% of the city and the state median. Employment rates for work age individuals are low as well, approximately half of the city and state rate. So those that are employed primarily work in service occupations that typically pay lower wages. Residents report multiple barriers to employment, but disability and related issues was the #1 challenge that they identified, and that impacts about 1 in 3 residents. Many households in the West Side do not have affordable and reliable access to the internet or computing devices, and this makes remote learning, particularly during COVID, but also job search and other activities of daily living even more challenging. So with regard to health and wellness, residents of the West Side actually have good access to health insurance and report higher rates of insurance than the average Chattanoogan. Yet, approximately half of residents report that they use the hospital emergency room or urgent care when they are sick or in need of medical help, rather than a primary care doctor. The greatest unmet health need is dental services. And residents also report very high rates of chronic health conditions. This includes asthma, diabetes, hypertension, as well as depression and other mental health conditions. And these rates are 2 to 3 times what you would see in the city of Chattanooga as a whole. There's also a great need for services tailored to those with disabilities, given the high rate of disability in the neighborhood. Needed services include assistance with activities of daily living, but also with mental health services and services related to accessibility and transportation and accessibility and housing. So overall, there is a high rate of food insecurity, and the #1 non-health related service that residents say they need is emergency food assistance. And many residents also report that the cost and limited availability of fruits and vegetables locally are an impediment to healthy eating. So moving on to education and youth, one of the bright spots in our findings is that there is good participation in center-based early learning programs. Approximately half of the 95 children under age 5 at College Hill participate in an early learning program, many at the Head Start program that's offered by YFD directly in the neighborhood. Of the approximately 250 Westside students, there's a concentration of students that are enrolled in one of 5 schools: Battle Academy, Brown International Academy, Orchard Knob Middle, Howard Connect Academy, and the Howard School. According to data from the Hamilton County Public Schools, there are many indicators of high academic risk among Westside students. So rates of chronic absence and out-of-school suspensions in the Westside are more than twice the rate in the district and the state, and far fewer Westside students achieve proficiency on standardized tests compared to their counterparts in the district and the state. Despite some excellent programs like Splash Youth Arts and a stated interest, a great deal of interest in programming, less than 40% of school-aged children at College Hill actually participate in a youth program or other out-of-school time activity. And while there are numerous reasons for this, COVID-19 safety concerns was the #1 barrier that parents cited. So lastly, with regard to crime and safety, there's a number of key points to highlight. First is that crime, violence, and vandalism was the #1 thing that residents told us they do not like about the West Side. And this perception of crime appears to be aligned with reality. The Part 1 violent crime rate in the West Side is 2 times that of the city and trending upward. When asked about police and community relations, residents at Gateway Tower, which is an elderly site in the West Side, were more likely to perceive the police in a positive light than residents of College Hill, a family site. Approximately 1 in 5 residents of College Hill perceived the police as a potential threat, and less than half said they felt safe providing information and evidence to the police. Across the board in the West Side, residents agreed that better lighting and security systems were the best way to make the West Side safer. Residents at Gateway Tower also prioritized community policing, while residents of College Hill and the neighborhood more broadly identified anti-gang initiatives and neighborhood beautification as priorities.
So thank you, Kathy and Hunter. Much more detail is available at the website on your screen. We encourage you to spend some time looking at the data, and there's an opportunity also for you to send questions to the planning team or suggestions through the website as well. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you at the upcoming community workshops. Date and location also on your screen. Thank you.
The next stages of the process will involve the creation of a shared vision that will lead to the design of a plan for the district. Our hope is that all of the residents and stakeholders who've been so active in the process will continue to join us as the important work continues. Once a shared vision is in place, the planning team will create detailed plans for the neighborhood, including people, buildings, services, infrastructure, and public space. Alternatives and a draft plan will be presented for input before the plan is finalized. In the final stage of planning, the team will create a common document with action items to guide our path forward. Whether you are a resident, an elected official, a business owner, or one of the countless individuals interested in the historic West Side, we hope you will join us on our shared journey. The West Side is evolving. We hope you will be a part of the process. Thank you for joining us.
Westside Evolves project planners and participants gratefully acknowledge the following for their support in making this program possible: the Chattanooga Housing Authority, the City of Chattanooga, the Chattanooga Design Studio, the Lyndhurst Foundation, Benwood, and the Footprint Foundation.